we are discussing whether or not the Giants should be in on Tarik Skubal and what they're saying around the league if the Giants could be in on Tarik Skubal, what that trade cost would even look like on Locked On Giants.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, y'all? I'm Alan Stiles, and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. On the show, we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that combines passion, analytics with the eye test, and a little bit of fun. I'm from the Bay Area, but I live in Sacramento now, and I host a show on Sacktown Sports, the Alan Stiles Show, as well as emceeing Sacramento Rivercats games. All in all, I'm lucky enough to cover a team I've been a fan of all my life. Today, we are discussing whether or not the Giants should be in on Tarik Skubal and what they're saying around the league if the Giants could be in on Tarik Skubal, what that trade cost would even look like. Also, Heliot Ramos and whether or not he should be in the trade conversation in general. And last but not least, some minor league moves. The Giants sign someone they would like to find as a hidden gem. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. So there are a lot of conversations being had about Tarik Skubal, and this just popped up this morning, fresh off the press from ESPN. This is from Kylie McDaniel of ESPN, and basically they're laying out the three options for the Tigers and what they should do with Tarik Skubal, who is, I guess, from the Bay Area, even though he didn't grow up in the Bay Area. We can try to claim him if that's going to help get this thing done. Obviously, if you sign or if you trade for him, you would then have to sign him to a lot of money. But I'm going to lay out what Kylie kind of goes through as the options for the Tigers as they talked to a couple different GMs around the league and what they would do. So it was pretty interesting that they did it that way, or at least people within front offices. So the first option for the Tigers is pretty simple. It's to trade Tarik Skubal. This was the least popular option among the panel, and one rival executive explained why. The whole reason you do all this is to start the season with the potential contender that has an ace. You can't throw away that before the season starts. How long will it take to get there again? The second option that Kylie brought up is keep Skubal, but trade him at the deadline if the season doesn't go as planned. In the event things go sideways during the first half of the season in 2026, everyone on the panel agreed that this was the right move. Defining what going sideways means was the expanded playoffs is hard, but battling for a wild card spot around the trade deadline was where the gray area began for our panelists. You cannot, under any circumstance, hold Skubal through the trade deadline and miss the playoffs. That would be a catastrophe. That was one agent. So yeah, just to clear it up, he says, with the Tigers president of baseball operations, Scott Harris, facing a decision that will shape the future, we talked with 11 industry insiders, so not GMs, industry insiders, about what Detroit should do this offseason. So we've been through the first two: trade Skubal this winter. The second one, keep Skubal, but trade him at the deadline if the season doesn't go as planned. And the third option, keep Skubal no matter what, try to extend him and take the draft pick if he ends up leaving. This would be a bold move in the era of asset value focused approach that so many teams are taking now. If Skubal were to walk in free agency, the compensation would likely be a draft pick in the 30s the following summer, and that's it. That type of pick is valued at roughly $8 to $10 million of surplus value, depending on your source. There is more value that would come before that for Detroit, but it's hard to quantify. The Tigers would get another title run with the reigning back-to-back AL Cy Young winner and more time to convince him to stay in Detroit. Maybe that combination could make magic, and both sides could land on a deal before he hits free agency. Skubal has said he wants to stay in Detroit, so you can't rule it out. Another rival executive thinks Harris is focused on how to make this happen. He will never believe he can't sign Skubal. But the issue is, and tell me if you've heard this before, that being said, Skubal is being represented by Scott Boras, and it makes it unlikely he will sign a deal without at least testing the market, as Boras typically advises clients to hit free agency. So it's just going to come down to what the Tigers are willing to pay, and he could even be the first $400 million pitcher, what the Tigers are willing to pay, what other teams are willing to pay. And let's bring it all the way back to the Giants. If they were to even be a part of this trade, I'm not sure where the assets even start. You could say goodbye to Bryce Eldridge. You could say goodbye to Heliot Ramos. You could say goodbye to Josuar Gonzalez. You could say goodbye to anyone of note from a large standpoint, or from a larger league standpoint, not just the top 30 that we're talking about. Every league or every team has a top 30. That doesn't mean your top 30 is valued that highly, right? It depends. So we're talking about anybody who's anybody in the Giants organization and a couple position players. Then you'd have to pay Tarik Skubal, but at that point, obviously you would want to. Yeah, I lean closer to thinking that the Giants don't even have the assets to get this done, rather than the option that they do. But if they did, I mean, we're talking about really accelerating the thought process and really accelerating the expectations for a first time. And I know, just to be clear, yes, pitching coach in the minor leagues, he was a bullpen coach in the majors, but first time big league pitching coach that you just hired, first time MLB manager that you just hired, those expectations would be through the roof. So there's two ways to look at it. You could look at it, and we're talking about the Bay Area, so we'll stay there, like Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr was given the keys to a really good situation. Some people said, well, Mark Jackson kind of built that thing. A lot of other people said Mark Jackson took that as far as he could, and Steve Kerr is who got it over the hump and, learned to get Steph and Clay in different positions, and Draymond and things like that, and kind of revolutionize what they were doing. So there's the Steve Kerr part of it. And then there is the Steve Nash part of it. And Steve Nash was the head coach out there in Brooklyn when it was Kevin Durant, when Kevin Durant left the Warriors, Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. You have two similar situations because they were brand new head coaches and first-time coaches in the league. And one worked and one didn't. And they both had a high level of talent. Obviously, the Nets were more so cobbled together. The Warriors were on their way up and had more of a cohesive group. But those are two examples. And you would put Tony Vitello in a really, really, I don't think tough is the right word, but it would just be a confusing spot. Because if you got Tarik Skubal, I mean, obviously the Giants would be one of the favorites to come out of the West. I don't know that they would be the favorite. It would still be the Dodgers, but they would fly up the boards just based on having Tarik Skubal. I mean, you'd have Logan Webb, Robbie Ray, Tarik Skubal, and then at that point, do you go get a Scherzer and a Verlander, and you got Landon Roop? I mean, that would be one of the best rotations in the league by far. So those expectations would be through the roof. Right? You'd have to make the playoffs immediately. Then you're going to pay this guy possibly $400 million, hopefully less, but we know how Scott Boras gets down. So I don't think the Giants have the assets to do it. They're definitely going to send a call out to Detroit. I can tell you that, because that's just due diligence, right? They're going to send a call out to Detroit, see what it's looking like, see what the appetite is, because this is a similar situation to me, like the Angels and Ohtani. And the Angels, they decided to not trade Ohtani, to try to convince him to stay. And we all knew that he wasn't going to stay, but they felt like it was something they owed to their fan base to do. And that's the direction that they wanted to go in. With the Tigers, I don't know if they feel the same way. They could say, hey, we have a playoff team out here and we're going to lose Skubal, but, we still have a lot of good pieces. And I don't know what's going to happen with Gleyber Torres, but they got a couple guys that are, moving and grooving. But they could say, hey, we've made the playoffs. We feel like we can continue to do this even if we move off of Tarik Skubal. So that's the direction we're going to go. And we're building for our future. We're going to also get some guys back to help our present roster. So I think that dealing with Scott Boras, unless you're ready to really open up your wallet and pull out the platinum or black card, you're probably going to think about moving him if you're Detroit. as far as the Giants are concerned, I don't know if they have the assets. I don't even know what a trade like this looks like because the Angels did not trade Ohtani, or else we would have. That would have been a decent comp. Not the same because it's Ohtani, but it would have been a decent comp. And we could have, used that to compare, but we don't even have that right now. So whether or not the Giants should be in on Tarik Skubal, I think they should be in on everyone. I don't think they have the assets, and you're just now building up your farm system. Do you want to sell it all? When I believe the Giants think, specifically in the ballpark that they play in, they can get it done in a different way, which is why they keep trying to tell us we ain't going to pay $100 million or whatever for a pitcher. I can tell you that I don't necessarily believe that they'll pay that much, but on the other end, I don't know if they are going to want to pay Tarik Skubal money. I might believe him. I might believe them there. So somewhere in the middle. On the other side, we know someone that would definitely be gone in that deal, and that's Heliot Ramos. But should he be gone in any other sort of deal? Let's talk trading Heliot Ramos, and let's discuss his season when we return. More Locked On Giants coming up. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's talk about Heliot Ramos and what to do with the left fielder who burst onto the scene. I think that Heliot Ramos might be one of the more polarizing players on the team. A lot of y'all really don't like Heliot Ramos, and I think Heliot Ramos can hit. I think he's a pretty good hitter. I just think, unfortunately, that's all he can do. And my gripe, if you will, with Heliot Ramos, I know the base running blunders. People hate base running blunders, so I get all that. But my gripe is really trying to diagnose who Heliot Ramos is as a hitter. That's kind of the tough thing for me. But I mean, he hit 21 home runs, and Oracle Park is his home park, right? He had a 1.2 WAR, 620 at-bats, 159 hits. He had a batting average of 256, for those of you who still care about that. I tend to. 85 runs, 69 RBIs, 6 stolen bases, 328 on base percentage, 400 slugging, a 728 OPS, and a 108 OPS plus. Compared to his all-star season, yeah, I mean, he dropped a little bit. He was at 269 in his all-star year. He ended at 256, like I mentioned. His on-base percentage was higher by 0.6 of a point this past season. Or that even might be hundredths of a point. His slugging went down as well. He was at 469, and he was at 400 this past season. So obviously his OPS took a bit of a hit. So I feel you on that. But and obviously, I guess I'm burying the lead. It's the fielding is also an issue. But I do think he has a decent bit of value, and I do think the problem is you cannot hide him anywhere because you have other issues in the outfield, right? And if you had an elite center fielder, this is not a Jung-Hoo Lee dig, but if you did have an elite center fielder, maybe some of that would get covered up a little bit. And if you had a lineup that was more diverse in stealing bases and doing other things, that might not put as much onto Heliot Ramos, and he could just get in there and hit. And the other thing, he's a bigger dude. I mean, I think he could play first base on a team, right? On an MLB team. The problem is you're not going to do that on the Giants. He's not going to DH on the Giants. So that's part of the issue with Heliot Ramos. It's him, but it's also his situation. This is from Josh Lewis from Around the Foghorn. He laid out 5 Giants that could be traded this offseason. After bursting onto the scene in 2024, Ramos took a significant step back in 2025 while still showing flashes at the plate of what earned him an all-star nod last season. Ramos struggled mightily both in the field -8 in defensive runs saved, and on the base pass, multiple highlight reel level mental errors. Ramos's bat, like most of the team, was also incredibly inconsistent, seeing a fall of 64 OPS points from last season. He can still show the pop that earned him over 20 home runs for the second season in a row. And another team could take the chance that he regains his all-star form if the Giants decide to resume their almost 2-decade-long revolving door in left field. And like I said, he did what he did at Oracle Park. I think that matters. And I think fit matters as well. As Josh lays out, there were a lot of inconsistent bats. So you have a bunch of inconsistent bats and you're going to want somebody to show that consistency. I'll tell you this, just from the naked eye, just the eye test, it did feel like Ramos was the one guy that was getting knocks and getting on base. On all these different stretches that the Giants had where just nobody could hit, I would look up and Heliot Ramos was getting a knock. Now, here's the thing. He was getting singles. It felt like there were a lot of singles. You don't steal bases. You know, you're not really going gap to gap. We talked about the OPS dropping. So that was my conundrum with Heliot Ramos. He was doing good things, but when it comes to who he's going to be on this team and what the team needed, it just didn't feel like there was a lot of impact, right? I don't want to say empty calories, but I do feel like that is where I'm landing with Heliot Ramos. It was a lot of empty calories this past season. And I don't necessarily know that it's his fault, but those 21 home runs, off the top of my head, trying to remember, you know, and I'm being nitpicky here, where they came and, you know, what type of value that they shared. Yeah, it did feel like Heliot Ramos didn't have a ton of moments, which is why I think a lot of you would be more than happy to move off of him. The numbers say that he didn't have a bad year, but just from what you watched and what sticks out in your mind, the blunders in the outfield, on the base paths, you'll probably trade, not to speak for you, whoever is listening or watching right now, but that's just the vibe that I feel like from the Giants fan base. I do think he brings some sort of value. I could see him being part of a trade to get a solid reliever. We're not really talking about a starter unless it's a back end starter, and obviously you'd be giving up more. Hey, we talked about the Hunter Green thing, but Heliot Ramos would be your MLB ready bat, right? Where's his value there? I think you would still have to move off of probably a top 5 prospect and more to go get a Hunter Green. If you wanted to do that, I think you could probably do it without moving Bryce Eldridge, but you'd be moving a lot of other things, and Heliot Ramos would for sure be a part of a deal like that. But I think Heliot Ramos gets a bit of a bad rap. As you can tell, he's kind of confusing in how he plays the game and who he is. He's just kind of there to get hits, right? And hit 20 home runs, even though it doesn't feel like he hits 20 home runs. If you get him in a different ballpark, I'll tell you this much. If you get him, and no disrespect to Cincinnati, but they call Great American Ballpark Great American Small Park. If you got him in Cincinnati, though, he's probably hitting 30 home runs. I think so. He hit 21 with his home base as Oracle Park. If you got him to Cincinnati or, you know, I don't want to say Colorado because that's a cop-out, but if you got him to Cincinnati or any of these fields that are more conducive to hitting, I think you could have something there, right? He could be a nice 5-6 hitter for you. It's just with the Giants right now, you kind of are paying for your beef. He's doing the leadoff thing. I'm more old school when it comes to the leadoff hitter. He doesn't really strike me as a leadoff hitter. They just don't really know where to put him. So I think he could bring some value to another team for sure, but you'd have to send much more if it were for a bigger name, Hunter Green. I would look at Heliot Ramos in a deal for a reliever, something like that. Speaking of relievers, the Giants feel like they found a hidden gem and a former minor league all-star with who they just picked up. We'll tell you who it is and break down what to expect in the last segment of Locked On Giants. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. So the Giants continue to make some shrewd minor league moves that could become major and sooner than you know it. And most recently, They have signed Wilkin Ramos. He is 6'5", big boy. He just turned 25, and they're looking at him to be a hidden gem type of acquisition, and I'll tell you why. This is from Chase Ford. The San Francisco Giants have signed right-handed pitcher Wilkin Ramos to a minor league deal with an invitation to Major League spring training. Ramos has a 3.22 ERA along with 322. That's kind of funny. 322 in both. 322 strikeouts during his minor league career. He also made the Eastern League All-Star team this past season with the Altoona Curve. Ramos, and this is part of the write-up with them, Ramos, who originally signed with the Athletics as an international free agent in 2017, first joined the Pirates organization in 2018 to complete the trade of pitcher Tanner Anderson. Ramos was selected by the Mets from the Pirates in the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft following the 2022 season, but re-signed with the Pittsburgh Pirates. This is from our guy, Jeff Young. Wilkin Ramos had a 2.64 ERA and 47 appearances split between two levels for the Pirates organization in 2025. Ramos relies on a mid-90s sinker and high 70s sweeper. Ramos does a great job of keeping the ball on the ground, which is why I think the Giants were interested, and has only allowed 10 home runs in 7 minor league baseball seasons, which is crazy. That's crazy because some of these ballparks, I was just making fun of Cincinnati, some of these ballparks, the ball flies out of them. So only 10 home runs in 7 minor league seasons. That's really incredible. I have this from his time in AAA, not a ton of action, but in total, he has a 5.94 ERA. So we'll see what he has been assigned to the Sacramento River Cats. So I'll get a close look at him and we will see what he can do. Obviously, he's got that invitation to Major League spring training. The Giants, I really like this. I know it's a minor league deal, quite literally, but I like that the Giants have a type. I like that the Giants are deciding they have a type. You know, me and my wife, we'll watch Love Island, right? We'll watch The Bachelor from time to time. And does this person check your boxes, as trivial as it sounds? And sometimes you have somebody that doesn't check your boxes and it still works out, but you have certain boxes. He's got to be this tall. He's got to be funny. He's got to look like this, whatever it is. And the Giants are starting to figure out what their type is. They like a guy that is going to keep the ball on the ground. They like a guy that's going to limit the amount of home runs, and they can take advantage of their ballpark because you can catch Oracle on certain days, right? I mean, it's only 309. You got to get it up to splash hit it or even get it out of right field. But the left field side of the field, there can be some jet stream. So you can make a mistake and get burned by some righties or some strong lefties. We've seen Rafi Devers do it from the left side. So make no mistake about it. It's tough to hit at Oracle Park because of, honestly, it's more so that center field triples alley type deal. But if you get it on the corners or, you know, even closer to the corners, you can find some jet stream. So the Giants know that if you mess around and leave the ball up, yeah, this is still the major leagues, and somebody can run into something more often than not. So they know they want to bring in a guy and bring in guys that are going to keep the ball on the ground, utilize that very expensive infield, right, from first base to third base to shortstop, and that's what they're looking for. And they find somebody like Wilkin Ramos who has done that in his time. He was just a minor league all-star this past season. This is somebody that is very low risk and could be a decent reward based on who they have, right? I saw, and I know this stuff isn't always accurate, but they have him at they had him at 6'5". I think it was 165 or something like that. I know he's 25 years old, so he's not necessarily a spring chicken, but there's probably a little bit more, especially with the new director of performance. There's probably a little bit more they could put on him, and that can help too. So I really like this move. There are going to be a number of under the radar moves. Now, we're all here sitting waiting for the big move. But while we wait, these moves can at least be a little appetizer for us. Your little cheese and crackers with Thanksgiving coming up and everything. The cheese and crackers, the charcuterie board, the whatever you want to call it, to get you ready for the main course. And hopefully that main course comes sooner rather than later. And I would expect that it is going to happen, but it might not be in the form of a Tarik Skubal or a Framber Valdez. And I was reading the comments, a lot of you don't even want Framber Valdez. I don't think the Giants are going to go in that direction. I wouldn't, because the whole thing was sketchy to me. But this is a name that's going to be out there, and the Giants do like that type of pitcher in theory. He's a ground ball guy, but there's more to it. That's why you got to check the boxes. So we'll see what happens with Wilkin Ramos and the Giants, as some of these moves got to start happening soon, right? That's what you would think. We got to be getting closer to something. So we'll see. Until then, we will talk tomorrow to break down more Giants off season. Thank you for watching Locked On Giants. Thank you for listening to Locked On Giants. Be sure to follow me on social media at the _Styles Files, Styles with an I, and the official Locked On Giants Twitter and TikTok and Twitter X account as well. We will talk to you tomorrow. Until then, peace.